after a while, I got enough education, what I wanted, because I went from place to place. When they got what I thought I needed, I would move on. So I ended up back in Toronto. I went to New York for a year. I was back in New Brunswick. I went back to Toronto, and there I started driving a cab in 1989. And for the next 10 years, I drove a cab, and there was, it was endless. It was, there was 2.5 years where I never took a single day off. I drove every single day. And I think they call that a workaholic outside Toronto. In Toronto, you'd be a hero because that's what people do there. I drove a cab, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get anything going. I was banging my head against the wall, and I had a beautiful studio, but I couldn't use it because I was driving a cab, and I needed to drive a cab to pay for the studio, but I couldn't use the studio because I was driving a cab, and I had to drive a cab, and I was just circle around and around and around and around. And I remember about 95 or 97 maybe, 97, because the first few years of driving was fun. You meet all these quote-unquote interesting people. And then after a few years, you meet them again, and then you meet them again, and they're not as interesting as they were the first couple of times. So in 97, I remember, and this is kind of awful, but I had to make money. So I'm standing outside my cab, and I'm sort of leaning up against the fender. I'm in a parking lot, and it's kind of a desolate parking lot. And there's two guys in the back seat, and they paid me $20 to smoke something in the back seat, which wasn't marijuana or cigarettes. And I thought, well, I got to make a living, and as long as they don't make a mess, off we go. And I'm sitting there as they're doing that, and they turn the radio up, and I'm sitting like, can I think of a single decision that I made that made me end up here? And the answer was there was nothing. I couldn't think of anything. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't think of that one thing, that one bad decision or what, because I had a nice upbringing, middle class, Canadian upbringing. Dad was an engineer. We lived in a suburb in Moncton. Perfect childhood. And here I am sitting in a parking lot with these two, and the music wasn't even good music. And I'm going like, where did I go wrong? And so a little while later, things start to happen. So I want to go over here. And life says, no, you're going to go over here. So I meet someone, and we get together. She inherits a house, and I get out of Toronto. I get out of that mess I was in. And I end up in New Brunswick, and I end up on a middle of nowhere. I was on a river, and, there's a bit of money and a house, and I'm standing on the beach, and I'm going like, this is St. John River. I'm going like, what did I do to get here as opposed to that parking lot? And the answer was nothing. I have no idea how I ended up here. I didn't choose. I didn't sit at that parking lot and go, I think what I should do is meet somebody, and maybe their father will die and leave them a house, and that'll do it. And off I go, right? So that's what happened. So I ended up in New Brunswick. I know that didn't work out. It lasted about a year and a half. And I thought, well, I can either go back to Toronto, and I know what's waiting for me, or I can go to Halifax. I'm going to flip a coin. I literally flipped a coin, and it came out Toronto. So I took it and I flipped it again, and I went, Halifax. So and I didn't come here and say, what I'm going to do is, because nobody in their right mind would say this, I'm going to go to a smaller city, and I'm going to make it as an artist. I remember driving over, we had a car at the time. I remember driving over the Copaquid Pass, and I had no idea what I was going to do. I was going to wash dishes or load trucks, whatever I could get. I wasn't proud. I could, if somebody's going to pay me and I can do it, I'll do it. I don't have a preference. And I just happened to meet a guy who gave me a place, and it just happened to be in the South End, and it just happened to be nearby Spring Garden. And I saw some people selling art over there, and it was the last year you could actually make money doing this. I thought, well, I can do that. And so I started selling art there, and I was making more than I would in any menial job. And somebody just happened to tell me about the historic farmers market. You should go down there and sell art. And I just happened to have something to sell on that fence, and I started painting, and I started going to the market. And a long story short, it's a 10-minute story. I don't know whether it's long or short. I remember one day, it was 2002, and another one of those moments hit me. I was living on Morris Street, and it was 3 minutes to walk down to the farmer's market. And I got halfway down, and it's 6 in the morning, and the sun's coming up, and it's like somebody rebooted my life. And all of a sudden, I didn't know any money. I didn't have to answer to anybody. I was making a living with a paintbrush in a smaller city than Toronto, and I couldn't do it up there. And down here, I'm actually doing it. And I had been doing it for 6 months, and I could actually say I'm a painter. I'm a professional painter. I have no other source of income. I make paintings, and I sell them. What did I do to deserve this?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. I don't know. And I get very comfortable after a while as this goes on, because it's kind of a roller coaster. You know, sometimes you sell a lot of paintings and sometimes you don't. I ran into somebody who's here tonight, Adriana, who owns Argyle Fine Art over there, and she ran into me at the market. I just happened to she ran into me. Just happened to say, I'd like to sell some work, and it just goes on and on and on, and all these things. And it was as if I was standing aside and allowing a lot of this to happen, because no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't seem to, when I got behind something, it wouldn't work as well as if I just sort of stood aside and I saw an opportunity and I moved this way, and I saw an opportunity and I moved that way. So I've got 25 minutes left. 25 seconds left, sorry, 25 seconds. Sorry, I don't want to panic. I got 25 minutes. I got 15 seconds. So here's my artist statement. My artist statement is I paint landscapes. My artist statement, if you've ever read artist statements, they're tedious to read, and most of them, you'd never understand them. They're not even meant to be understood. So my artist statement is this. I drive around Nova Scotia or walk around Halifax, and I look around, look out the window until I go, and then I paint that. So that's my artist statement, and that's all I've ever done. It's not ideological. It has no deeper meaning. It just makes me go. So I've found, and if I got to just have 30 seconds more, I've found that this idea started to incorporate itself in my work. So I'd say, this is what I'm going to paint. And I'd start painting, and instead of this happening, it would start to move. And I'd say, I've got this photograph here and some sketches, and I have some ideas in my head, and this is what I'm going to paint. And I'd start working on it, and I would start over here, and it would move there because it was getting better. And there's 3 things I can do to a painting, and I do something, and now it's moving over here, now it's moving, and I end up with something that's completely different than the one thing that I started with. And at some point, I think, what was my input here? Because it just sort of took a life of its own, and the answer is nothing. And it's almost as if I didn't even paint it, but I go, well, it's making me go. So I sign it, and I give it to Adriana, and she hopefully sells it. And then I say, okay, I still have this original idea. And then paint. And now it's over here, and I go, okay, and then sign it, and then same thing. And I go, okay, so no matter how hard I try, just like I was getting behind my life, getting behind these paintings, even if I took a photograph and I said, I'm going to do everything in that photograph, I go, I don't really like the sky here, so I'll just change the sky and then paint the sky. And, well, I don't really like what's under it, and then it starts to go off again. And so it's been incorporated into my work. And I guess the life lesson is that I'm okay. People talk about getting out of your own way. And at 57, I'm really comfortable with getting out of my own way. And I've learned how to make a living at it, which makes me ecstatic. I get up every day. And all these great things in my life, I didn't wake up and say, I'm going to meet someone to marry. one day I woke up and I went to a barbecue and I met the woman that I've been with for 9 years. And it was like, I didn't plan on that. I didn't plan on any of it. I didn't even plan on coming to Halifax. I flipped a coin twice to get Halifax, and then I came here. And so I guess that's my life lesson, is that I get out of my own way, is that it's not all about, I'm going to do it. So that's my life lesson. Thank you.